So we'll give people the traditional couple of minutes to keep joining and then kick off at, let's say, 3 past. Jonathan, you're not showing up as a chair today for some reason. Oh, he's only on Zoom so far. There we go. Okay, it's 3 past, and Jonathan, I think, has managed to join. Your audio and video working okay, Jonathan? Yeah. Perhaps not. Anyway, we can do a bit of administrative as he finishes joining. So thanks for joining the call, folks. We have a bit of a planning session today. I guess that IETF note well probably applies, but to planning, yeah. So, but basically, be nice. There's Jonathan there now. Great. And there's a slide copied here. We obviously don't have in-person participants, but please mute unless you're presenting or speaking. And headsets are kind of recommended, even though I'm not using them. Here's today's agenda. We have an hour. We don't need to use an hour. If we go quicker, that's better. The agenda basically is the agenda bash. We'll spend a couple of minutes describing what we think is possible in Prague. Then we'll try and see who's still able to, of those who volunteered, who's still able to do something for Prague. Make a list, and for each of those, if there's more than 2, because we probably have room for 2 kind of sensible length sessions. If there's more than 2 people still able to help, then we'll ask each of them to kind of have a chat or describe what they would do, and then have some open discussion as to see how do we get to 2. I would encourage people to not think about this as a competition. The sequence of meetings goes on in the future. If you don't do something this time, you can do something next time or in a year's time or perhaps remote. So don't think about this as a winners and losers thing. It's more who's in a position to kind of do something for Prague, most easily, most effectively, that kind of thing. So that's our agenda, and then at the end we have sort of any other business if people want to raise stuff. Does anybody have a issue with the agenda, something they want to change? And while you're thinking about that, would anybody be willing to help with just keeping a few notes in the hedgedoc?
I can keep some notes, but should I take them in the note-taking tool, or is it okay if I take them on some local?
The note-taking tool is ideal. I posted in the agenda and the list of technologies, so just to get you started. If you look at the 4th from the right button at the top,
I
have a note-taking tool.
Is there some way that I can split the views so that I still see you?
I think you can right-click the note-taking tool to open a new window or tab.
Oh yeah, I have it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for helping. So yeah, and we don't need blow-by-blow notes. Just decisions or information. It doesn't have to be narrative notes. Okay. So anybody else want to bash the agenda? If not, then I guess, or Jonathan, do you want to jump in and say anything at this point, or no? Okay. So I'll just leave. This is the list of technologies I think that people have mentioned as being possibles, and I'll kind of try and describe what we think is possible logistically. So on the Sunday before the IETF meeting, there's a thing called the IEPG, which meets at from 10 until noon. And typically their room is prepared with all the audiovisual stuff we'd need in lecture style. I'm not quite sure how big the room will be this time, but in any case, they finish at noon, and we can probably get that room from noon until about 4 p.m. After 4 p.m. is problematic because then you start getting into welcome events and all sorts of things. So that would give us 4 hours. That seems to make sense to have 2 hours as a length of a session for one particular training, or just under 2 hours with a 20-minute gap in between. Which then would lead us to think that it seems to make sense to try and have training about 2 different technologies, if possible, in Prague. So that's 2 sessions, roughly 2 hours each. And what we were thinking, and again, this could be up to whoever is able to do stuff, is for a 2-hour slot, having the first hour more lecture style, or roughly the first hour more lecture style, and have the second hour more people actually trying to use the technology. And so people could get their change from a kind of a lecture style layout to put groups in chairs in circles or whatever they want to do. And for the first part, then it makes sense that you only need one person to give a talk. For the second part, I think it would be best if we had at least a couple of people extra who are able to kind of go around and help people get started, or get over install problems or get things working. So ideally, what we'd like for those who want to take a slot to do one of these 2-hour slots is somebody who's willing to and able to talk, and then a couple of other people familiar enough with the technology to help the other people in the room. What we'll also do is we're not quite sure of the numbers that we'll have available. The room we'll have available, how big it is. So we'll probably ask people to do a sign up. And we might limit the numbers to whatever seems sensible based on the room and the actual people's preferences, because it's not credible to kind of be doing any useful training for 200 people. And if we only get 2 people, then it's probably also that tells us something. So we'd have a sign up. We might ask. I think it would be good to be able to ask people to do installs, or maybe to run some test or something remotely before they arrive, if we can. If for the technology concern that makes sense. And this kind of crowd of people are. Typically, they wouldn't have too much of a problem installing stuff, but they'd probably forget to do it. And so I think that kind of covers. And again, if we have 5 technologies possible and we can only do 2 this time, in a year's time or at some other IETF meeting, we can do this again, or possibly remotely. So again, if it's not that we're rejecting things, it's just we kind of, I think, logistically only have room for 2. I think that covers the constraints, Jonathan. Is that right, or anything to
add? The only thing I would say is if we probably won't do another training in Brisbane, because I suspect that'll be a very quiet IETF, but we can probably do trainings in what's after Brisbane?
I forget. Somewhere in North America, somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Vancouver.
And then Dublin. So yeah. And I think there is a slight kind of European focus for people in this technology space. So if we wanted to do something in a year's time in Dublin, I can certainly help with that. I can get rooms if we want to do it in university or something. Lastly, okay, I should have said that because this is an IETF setup, we're being recorded. And similarly, we'd like to be able to record the training if possible, and then so that people who can't make the slot can still get some benefit, and so we can learn to do it better next time. So again, we'd hope to be able to record the training in Prague. We're not 100% sure if that's possible yet or not. It depends. It depends on what the Meet Echo setup, how complete it is for a Sunday. So we'll find that out shortly, I guess. Okay, so any questions about the logistics, or people thinking that what we described as a terrible idea or an okay idea? Any feedback on that? That'd be good to get now. So if you have some feedback on that, please do join the queue. And Felix.
Yeah, I like everything that has been said. I just wonder, in one email it was mentioned that pre-work might be something we should or should not give out. I'm of the opinion that we should not give out pre-work besides installing tools. Just wanted to.
Yeah, sure. I guess once we have figured out who'll be doing what, I think that'll be kind of up to the trainers, if you like, what they think is doable ahead of time. It was just a suggestion. Jonathan?
The reason why I was suggesting pre-work is that there are quite a few videos, at least for Tamarin on YouTube, on how to do the basics. And one comment I've had from a few people is that there's no sort of intermediate level training materials available. So if we could do something more higher level, that'd be really useful, I think. Maybe not for the first attempt at this, but certainly I think for a future attempt, it would definitely be worth saying, we assume you know, the first 5 pages of the Tamarin manual, I don't know, some number. But yeah, I guess maybe for the first iteration, we'll still not be really sure what we're doing. So
yeah, we're living there. Okay, any other comments? Positive, negative, by the by on the plan? Sophia?
Yeah, I'm very happy with this plan, and more than a little bit of a, future logistic question, which is more about if the results of these first experiment, let's call it that way, are going to then be posted somewhere, or the PDFs of the talks or the slides I don't know if the research group has a GitHub, but it would be good for future reference to get anything that it's documentation from these to be publicly available for future reference.
Sure. Yeah, I believe I think the setup that we'll be using is pretty much the Meet Echo thing that we have here. The only question is whether we'll have normal recording or not. So all slides and things will be in the data tracker, and if we can get recordings, and we probably will somewhere or another, those will end up in the normal places on YouTube, for example, and we can populate the research group wiki or whatever people think is best.
Yeah, there's one other, there's one bit of documentation that we might forget to put in, which Sophie just reminded me of. We should say at least which version of the tool the thing relates to, because at least Tamarin changes stuff sometimes. So we should say, we are using version XXX of this tool somewhere in the notes.
Good. And then one other thing, actually, I forgot to say is if somebody here has experience with how to do a good survey about the effectiveness of this kind of training, then Jonathan and I would like to hear from you so that we can figure out what kind of feedback to look for that's not kind of stupid and might be useful. So again, if somebody here knows how to do that kind of thing well, then please do get in touch. Okay, so I don't see anybody else in the queue. Looks like we're trying to pick 2. These are the things that were mentioned, and the slide shows the technologies that were mentioned on the list. So let me just see, do we have people for each of those here today? So if you're, if you're the person who represented Record Flux, I think that's Alexander Senier. Sorry, not sure to pronounce that, or somebody else. Is there somebody who can talk to that technology here today? Looks like not. If somebody joins in the meantime, fine. For Isabel, I guess, Gergely, you're here. So I presume you're, join the queue. Great. Gergely, you're in the queue. I'm just trying to figure out who's here and who's not for now. We'll come back to you to talk about Isabel in a second. But if you're in the queue with a question, go ahead. Okay. Tamarin, do we have somebody? Yes, great. Does Felix? I think Cass also sent mail to this, but Tamarin Koch. I think we got mail from Hans Dieter. I see you on the list, so I presume you can talk to that. And ProVerif, and I think I saw Mohammed was in the list earlier. And is still there. Great. Okay, so I think Record Flux, again, we don't seem to have anybody who's able to talk to that right now. Looks like not. in that case, so let's try and get like, again, it's not a competition. It's like which of us thinks we can kind of do the best thing. And let's have like 5 minutes for each of those. Felix, you have a question first? I was going to do them in the order of Isabel, Tamara, Cock, and then Provera.
Yeah, my proposal would have been to, I mean, it looks quite obvious which groups at least to choose things from, right? It would make sense to choose either Isabel or Cock, or either Tamrin, Proverif, or wait, we also have VerifPal in the notes, but not in the slide.
Okay, so VerifPal. Pardon me, you're correct. I shall fix the slide. Do we have somebody from willing to talk about VerifPal here? Sorry, pardon me. Nadim, I see you are here, so I presume you can do that. And I shall fix the slide. Yeah. So the answer may be obvious. Hopefully it is, but let's give people a couple of minutes to talk about what they think could be done. So we'll take them in the order of Isabel, Tamarin, then VerifPal, which was the order of the emails, then Cock, then ProVerif. So Isabel, I think, Gergely, if you'd like to give us a couple of minutes chat about what you think might be doable for Prague. Is it possible? What would you do? Kind of try and keep it to 5 minutes.
Okay, so I think I would like to step back from this in the case of November meeting, because my supervisor insists that I should do my research and not give talks anywhere. Sorry, and
that's perfectly okay, and it simplifies our challenge, which is always a good thing. Did you still want to talk a bit about what training you'd like to do?
Probably I could prepare some written material to share at the meeting if I can manage to Prague. Would it be interesting?
Sure. I mean, I guess
not necessarily for Prague, but I do think one of the things we want to help build up is training and resources. So if you have time to write something up, then maybe just put it on the research group wiki.
Okay, right.
Because I think that would be useful.
Right. Okay. Okay. So that was my 2 cents.
Great. The other thing is, I wouldn't. I mean, if it turns out you're not able to do something for Prague, which is fine, and you want to do something for later, maybe don't put in too much effort until after Prague, and you can kind of learn from how we get on there. But that's just a suggestion. Okay, so that's great. That simplified our problems. Fantastic. So who wants to speak to Tamarin for say what we might get done? Take a few minutes to talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Maybe I quickly introduce myself again as well. I'm Felix. I'm a PhD student at ETH Zurich, and I've worked both with and on Tamarin. So in a 2-hour workshop, my goal would be, maybe let me also introduce Tamarin for a second. So Tamarin is a protocol verification tool that allows the consideration of an unbounded number of participants and parallel sessions, and also lengths of the protocol runs. And it has been used for various case studies. One of them is the verification of TLS 1.3 performed by in part Jonathan here. I would give a 2-hour workshop on Tamarin where the goal really is to lower the barriers of access to Tamarin. So where the goal is to get people comfortable in approaching the tool. I've hosted a workshop like this with some success, I'd say last week at the OAuth security workshop in Eckham by London. And I cannot talk for Kar's schedule. He also expressed interest to give a tutorial on Tamarin. But if he has time, we would certainly do it together. We did it in the past, and we have a lot of materials. I think a good thing about Tamarin, which is worth pointing out, is that it has a fairly decent GUI that makes it very... that makes it, in the space of formal methods, rather approachable. Yeah, so that would be my goal for the IETF workshop. Are there any questions, maybe?
So I have one question. Sorry, I was trying to fix the slides and failing. But anyway, did you say whether you think it would be feasible to have like 2 or 3 people familiar with this technology? I think in the case of Tamarin, it probably is, but I just want to check.
I think it's rather possible than not possible. If Jonathan is there, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be
so
there.
Jonathan could help out with Tamarin. Karst expressed interest. I cannot speak on Karst's behalf. He's currently on vacation, so he didn't tell me, Felix, I'm definitely going to be there. But obviously he expressed interest, and as I know him, he would have checked his calendar as well before expressing interest. So that would make 3 people already.
So,
and
yeah.
And, it's not,
and I think there's also some other people involved in TLS who would be familiar, I guess, as well. Okay, any questions for Felix? I don't see anybody in the queue. So I think next one up for which somebody sent a mail to the list was Nadim about VerifPal. And then Nadim, apologies again for mucking up the slide. If you want to speak to what you think could be doable for this, with the constraints we have, etc., that would be great. So,
yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're cool. Visible and audible. Great.
So thanks. The thing to note about VerifPal is that it was created while I was, I did my PhD basically on ProVerif, and it was created as a sort of introductory tool specifically for people wanting to get into formal methods and learn the way that protocols are modeled. It does support, modeling protocols between principles and so on, but it does some things differently from ProVerif and Tamarin, with a uncompromising focus on user friendliness. It painstakingly speaks about principles in protocols explicitly. There's Alice, explicit Bob. Alice is doing this, Bob is doing that. The way that messages are formulated and queries are formulated is meant to be more intuitive and easy to learn. That being said, it is not a tool that is as suitable for a more sort of profound analysis and fine-grained analysis as Tamarin or ProVerif. And so I would very much like to stress that the value that VerifPal brings in general, and also at an event such as potentially this one, is more so its ability to enfranchise engineers, people who are really not into this stuff to begin with, as an initial stepping stone towards learning how models are written, how to read models, how analysis works, what can you get out of analysis, and how, like, the relationship between a protocol model and real-world engineering systems and so on. So please keep this in mind if you decide to move forward with VerifPal, because if you want to get like more serious analysis stuff, you're going to have to go with some of the other tools. I'd also close by saying that I have significant knowledge and expertise in ProVerif, and so I would be able to contribute in the ProVerif area as well, potentially in collaboration with Mohammed Sardar, who I think is also volunteering. And yeah, thanks. That's all I had to say.
Great, Nadim. And again, just the same question I had for Felix. If VerifPal was the topic of one of these sessions, do you think it would be feasible to have a couple of people in addition to yourself who are able to help out for the second half of the kind of training session? Or,
oh, sure. Yeah. We've done a bunch of sessions on VerifPal, and there's a bunch of people in the community who are either involved or have helped out in sessions before. Notably, there was one at Eurocrypt where I did it with my former master's student. And so, yeah, there was significant involvement and participation.
Okay, Mohammed, you're in the queue.
Yeah, I have attended one of the sessions of Nadim also. So if you decide to go with VerifPal, so I will be helping out him as well. So.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Nadim?
Yeah. One quick question, Nadim. When you say it's less powerful than Tamarin and ProVerif, I assume it's still sound, right? So it's still like, it's not going to give you okay, fine.
So we formalized the soundness of VerifPal in Coq. When I was a PhD student working on ProVerif, we found a ton of bugs in ProVerif. Bugs have been found in Tamarin. Bugs are certainly found in VerifPal, but these bugs are more so just like errors in the code. The general way in which VerifPal works has been described formally and also analyzed and formalized in Coq as well.
Okay, great. Who is next on the list?
Felix, you're in the queue. You have a question for Nadim, is it? Or?
Yes. Oh, yes, I have a question. Nadim, maybe this is just hearsay, but I thought that someone once mentioned that the tool can report it doesn't find an attack while there is one. But maybe that was so in some intuitive sense unsoundness, but yeah, maybe this person was just wrong informed, right? It's just hearsay. I didn't look into VerifPal. So it's sounding complete in both senses. It might not terminate, of course, undecidability, but
Right. So I mean, it's a symbolic model, protocol modeling tool, the same as
so maybe that was the comment on, right? Like the symbolic model as an abstraction might miss certain attacks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true for all symbolic modeling tools. I mean, as you know,
sure.
recently Tamarin added support for XOR, for example, right? Well, not so recently anymore. It's been years now. But Proverif to this day does not have support for XOR. I believe Proverif only recently added support for addition. And as such, depending on, Tamarin can also detect small subgroup attacks, right? And so, like, depending on the kind of attacks that you can detect and the type of attacks that you or sort of like the type of granularity and like fine detail that you bother to instill into your protocol model, you're gonna be able to find attacks or not. And also, like the question of termination in symbolic models is also rather general.
We don't need
to,
I just heard someone say something in along the lines of unsoundness, but your comment with the symbolic model explains it. Thanks. That was all. I just wanted to set that person's comment.
Not only is it in the symbolic model, but again, it doesn't have the really fancy novel extensions to the symbolic model that Tamarin does. Again, because it's a very beginnery tool for beginners, meant for beginners.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, great. I think next up is Hans Dieter. Great, thank you.
Yes. Is my audio working?
Perfectly, yes.
Yes. So I'm Hans Dieter from Leiden University. Also a colleague of mine, Dalia Papuk, would be able to come to Prague. And what we had in mind was basically to show a very general purpose tool such as COG. But then, of course, if you want to go into the details, then the question is how far do you have to go and how much can you assume from the audience to know already. So I really like to make sort of this distinction, right? You have the general purpose theorem proving tools like Isabel, COG, and then you have sort of domain specific tools really focused on modeling protocols. And for that, we also have MCRL2, which is developed in Eindhoven, available, which is a model checker, which is that might also be a possible solution. I didn't send this on the mailing list, but this is also what we could do. However, the problem that we have is more organizationally, because we are with two people, and I am an expert on COG, and my colleague Dalia is an expert on MCRL2. So I'm not sure whether we could, if we prepare for this session, for actually also giving guidance, whether we have enough people available to do that. So that's, yeah. By the way, we could also say something about what kind of idea we had in mind for modeling a protocol is to either do something like a gossip protocol, so an abstract form of a gossip protocol, or a heartbeat protocol. And then, of course, don't expect too much of it. I mean, it's an hour plus an hour, so you cannot do too much. But I mean, the principles, at least in the first hour, you could explain what is a gossip protocol in the first place theoretically, and how would you then model it using a general purpose tool such as COG, and how would you then model check it using a domain-specific tool such as MCRL2. But I mean, the problem we have is sort of with the support. We cannot have, we don't have too many people that can be there for us.
Okay, so and then just to be clear, I think you would envisage that probably one of you would be there, or both of you, or if you're going ahead.
Yeah, we could go both there, but okay. I mean, we do have different expertise. So, so I'm on the theorem proving side, and Dalia is more on the model checking side. So that is not.
Okay, so if we were to go ahead with this, we'd probably need to try and find a couple of other, somehow find somebody else familiar with COG to turn up, or and which might happen, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Hans Dieter?
I think there are other people on the call who are familiar with COG as well. So.
Yeah, so that would require then a little bit of preparation in the sense of that the material that I would want to suggest to discuss is already available in front of time. so that also the people know whether they are able to assist or not with that. Yeah.
Good point. Felix?
Just one quick question, not sure if I got you correctly. Would you also focus on protocol verification in this workshop?
Yeah, so the domain-specific tools are more suited for protocol verification in the sense of you want to verify, for instance, security properties. In this case, a general-purpose theorem prover is more showing how you would model the behavior of a protocol. So that's sort of it's more how you would embed protocol behavior in a general-purpose theorem prover.
Okay,
And then, of
thanks.
course, then you can use all the facilities of the theorem prover to prove whatever property you like about such protocols. And so, as long as this can be expressed formally within the COG system, say, you could do, of course, protocol verification that way as well. Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Hans Dieter? Not so far. And thanks everybody for being so terse. It's really helpful. So Mohammed, I guess you were to talk about ProVerif.
Yeah, my name is Mohammad Usama Sardar, and I am a PhD student at TU Dresden. For the last 4 years, I've been working on ProVerif, and basically what we have done is basically I am a systems engineer. I'm not a formal methods guy, and I faced a lot of resistance in going through all these things like systems engineers like Intel, ARM, and so on. These companies write their specifications. And formalizing these specifications, going through these tools to better understand what exactly do they mean was one of the objectives of this whole project that started 4 years ago. We have had a lot of success where we have successfully found a number of attacks, got back to Intel, improved a lot of their specifications. Now we are working with ARM and very actively with other partners. Hannes, who is in the call, so he has one of the internet drafts that we are now formalizing, which is a remote attestation plus TLS. So people from ARM, Siemens, Linaro, and Barkhausen Institute, and myself from TU Dresden. So we are all involved in this and trying to use ProVerif to provide a better specification for this draft that I also sent in the email. So in brief or in summary, what I would say is that we have tackled both kind of audience, which is number one, I will skip out the students of TU Dresden who have, let's say, even no knowledge of security. So we started from the beginning slightly. Over the period of these 4 years, we started introducing ProVerif slightly via simple examples, giving them the background of security, and then a little bit for formal methods. We kept increasing that. We found that it helped them develop the kind of thinking that was required to understand what's going on inside these complicated, complex systems. And it really developed their intuition to develop better algorithms, better designs. And so I will skip that case because it's not applicable for IETF. For what's actually relevant is two cases. Number one, people who have knowledge about security, but not about formal methods. And in that case, we have over the period of last 6 to 7 months, we are working very actively with Intel, where they have shown a lot of interest and they wanted to formalize further parts of their own of their system, which is upcoming trust domain extensions. RATS working group is actively working on this. And then the second category, which is that knowledge of security, knowledge of formal methods, but not necessarily of protocol verification. In that, we have worked with ARM's verification team. And there for ARM, the solution called Confidential Compute Architecture, again from the RATS working group of IETF, there we are working with Simon Thomas and Shales Young. So what we are doing is basically formalizing the parts of these protocols so that they can be integrated into the TLS. So now that part is being integrated into verification. So I believe what I can do is I can and ProVerif is maybe one of the exceptions which does not have nice get to start a kind of a tutorial. So I had a lot of difficulties in the beginning, but I would also like to focus more on like the example, the internet draft of harness, I think is a very good example where we have covered remote attestation and TLS covering authentication, key exchange, and Nadeem also has good expertise. I think he will be of good help too. So we can both like coordinate to do this together, which would be both helpful for the TLS working group, IETF RATS working group, and other working groups which might be interested.
Great. And yeah, just the same question as before. If ProVerif was the topic of one of these sessions, do you think we could get 2 or 3 people for the second half of it who are familiar? I think.
So I have one student who I can bring, and Nadeem I think also expressed his availability. So
Okay.
and
So
about Karthik, I'm not sure, he might not be available.
Great. Okay, so that's feasible. Okay, any other questions from Mohammed about ProVerif? Don't see anybody in the queue, so thank you. Okay, so that's it looks like we have four options. So let's just have a what do people think? How would you go from 4 to 2? What's your suggestion for that? Please join the queue if you have some suggested way forward. I can see since there's some people have been chatting in the chat room, and that's fine to repeat that. It might be useful. In fact, Felix.
Yeah. So will the 2 sessions be hosted in parallel or consecutively?
It's consecutive.
Okay. I mean, for me, I would say it makes sense to go for COC and one other tool, because I think all the other tools, ProVerif, Tamrin, VerifPal, they're rather close together. So I don't think it would introduce an audience to that is new to formal methods to different concepts. So for variety, I would go for COC. And then, of course, I'm biased towards Tamrin, so this is where I must stop talking.
Again, it's not a competition, but getting people's opinions is good. So other opinions, we'd like to get them. So please join the queue. Sophia.
Yes, which is, I think, Tamarind will be a very great aid to actually have. Sorry, my Discord is doing noises. It would be really great to have also because at least several working groups on the IETF have heard about the tool and know that it could be used for different protocols. So at least we have that. And then I also support what Felix was saying regarding COC, because I think it's mainly a big building block that can serve for many things. So seconding that.
Okay, thank you. So please do join the queue and give us your input. Jonathan is suggesting a poll. Yeah, we can do a poll in a minute. Yeah, Nadeem?
Yeah.
Jonathan, do you want to start getting a poll ready of some kind with, I don't know, I don't think there's a multiple choice thing, but.
So I'd like to second the the soundness of the Tamarind COC combination. I think I'm very familiar with ProVerif, and nevertheless, I would say that this is probably the best way forward given the selection of the tools. The benefits that Tamarind brings here are likely the fact that it's under a lot of active research and development. It has this kind of really weird but useful web UI thing that makes it more easy to get feedback on what you're doing. The language of Tamarind is, I would assess it as a bit difficult, but still the combination of Tamarind and COC is probably the best way forward here in my estimation.
Great, thank you. That's 3 people in a row who said that, so we probably don't necessarily need more people saying it, but if you feel motivated to say that, great. Does anybody want to suggest a different thing, or is everybody kind of seeing, if Tamarind and COC are things we can get the people and presentations ready for, does that seem like a good answer? Oh, okay, now we have you can now use the polling tool to say what you think. Is that a good answer? Okay. So I think, okay. We have 11-0. That seems like okay. I think we have a result. Excellent. And thanks everyone for being so reasonable about it and so quick, which is good. Okay, so if we go with Tamron and Koch, I think what we'll do is Jonathan and I will kind of follow up with email. We might try and do a few more calls with people on more, on the kind of more granular detail between now and November, and yeah, I think that's the meat of the meeting that we wanted to get done today. And I think we have, we've identified people who said they'd help with these things. We'll follow up between now and November with that, and hopefully have a really useful 4 hours of training. So great. Anything else on that before we get to the any other business part of the agenda? Nobody joining the queue. And now we're at the any other business part of the agenda. So does anybody have other business they would like to raise around that's relevant to the research group? If so, now's a good time. Nadim.
Yes. I still am of the opinion that it's possible that VerifPal might be useful for super beginners, given that the proliferation of like thinking about protocols in a formal way isn't exactly very strong in the engineer like culture of the IETF. So in that sense, maybe not for this event, like Tamron and Koch are probably way better and more mature and developed and so on. But in the future, please keep in mind that there is potentially some value for absolute beginners to introduce the notion of formal modeling. And I'd be more than happy to contribute some work with VerifPal should that be useful in the future.
Great, and thank you. And yeah, certainly we are thinking about the future as well. I'm sure, for example, Gergely will probably be interested in maybe doing something with Isabel also in future. So I think this is not the be all and end all. This is like just the first kind of iteration of this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do another session at maybe
at least Dublin,
120.
probably,
Yeah,
Vancouver, maybe.
Yeah.
Gergely, you were in the queue there for a second. I think you feel free to speak. We have a couple of minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a note that next year in Ireland you will have an IETF, so for that I might go.
Cool. I can even get you loads of rooms for that. So, although it is during term time, so never mind. Okay, any other business? Not necessarily related to training. We have a couple of minutes. I know Jonathan is keen to get away because he has a dinner that he has to get to. So we won't just sit here and use the minutes if we don't need to. I don't see anyone in the queue, so I think let's declare victory. And thanks again for everybody for being so reasonable and speedy about trying to decide this. It could have taken longer, but it didn't. Thanks to you guys. So well done. And we'll work with people then to try and get some more of the details sorted out and the materials ready and all that kind of stuff. You'll see something from us if you're involved with Tamron or Koch in the next week or so. So early next week we'll start sending you some more mail and do the next level of planning. That's all I had. Thanks everybody. Jonathan?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you everybody, and we'll see you at 118.
Great, thanks all, and we'll follow up later. And thanks Felix for helping with notes. It's really useful. Thanks.
I just put something in the chat. I don't know if I did it the perfect way. I put them right in the agenda following the discussion. I hope it's good this way. Cool.
Anybody doing it is perfect. So yeah, it's perfect.
Yes, thanks. You.
Okay, so we're dropping off. I'm going to drop off too. Do I need to stop the recording or something? Mm-hmm.